December 16th, 2000, Lake Seminole, Florida. The sun hasn't even touched the horizon when a 31-year-old real estate appraiser loads his gear into a boat and pushes off into pre-dawn darkness. 19 degrees. The kind of freezing cold that makes your breath visible, makes your fingers go numb even through gloves. But Mike Williams loved duck hunting enough to brave any weather. His friends joked he'd hunt in a blizzard if ducks were flying. By noon, Mike should have been home celebrating his 6th wedding anniversary with his wife, Denise. They had reservations at a little bed and breakfast, a romantic getaway planned for weeks, something to rekindle what they'd built together since 9th grade. Instead, his boat sits empty on Lake Seminole, engine off, hunting weapon secured in its case, full tank of gas like it never moved. And Mike? Gone. Vanished into thin air on a lake famous for swallowing secrets. This is a story that took 17 years to unravel, about a best friend who became something far darker than anyone imagined, about a wife who may have orchestrated the perfect ending, about a mother who refused to believe lies when everyone else accepted them, and about alligators that supposedly consumed every trace of a grown man without leaving behind a single shred of evidence. This is how the two people Mike Williams trusted most in the world conspired to erase him from existence, and how they almost got away with it. Mike Williams had it figured out by 31, real estate appraiser pulling $200,000 a year at Ketchum Appraisals in Tallahassee. That's serious money in the year 2000. The kind of money that bought a beautiful home in an upscale subdivision. The kind that meant his family wanted for nothing. Young daughter, beautiful wife, success written all over his life. His boss, Clay Ketchum, called him the hardest working person he'd ever seen. Mike would arrive at the office before dawn while Tallahassee still slept. Work a full brutal day doing property appraisals. Go home for dinner with wife and baby daughter. Then, and this is where it gets crazy, return to the office after they went to bed and work until midnight, sometimes later. On weekends, while other people were sleeping in or watching TV or doing normal weekend things, Mike was out in his duck boat at 4 in the morning, then back at his desk by noon. Weekends weren't rest for Mike Williams. They were opportunities to hunt and work. Think about that level of dedication for a second. This wasn't someone coasting through life on talent or luck. This was pure, relentless work ethic. Building something, creating a future for his family through determination most people can't even imagine. He'd married high school sweetheart Denise Morell in 1994. They'd been together since 9th grade at North Florida Christian School. It was almost a cliche. Cheerleader meets football player. Young love that lasted. The kind of story that makes people believe in romance. Their daughter Ansley was born in 1999. Friends say Mike was absolutely devoted to that little girl. Would rearrange his impossible schedule just to spend time with her. The kind of dad who never missed a chance to hold his baby despite working what amounted to 2 full-time jobs. But underneath this perfect surface, something dark was growing, something Mike didn't see coming. Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester, had been in his life forever. Childhood friends, Brian sold insurance, was good at his job, trustworthy, the kind of friend you'd call if you needed help at 3 in the morning, the kind you'd trust with your life savings, with your family, with anything. Mike did trust him, with everything. What Mike didn't know, Brian had been having an affair with his wife since 1997. 3 years of lies and secret meetings. 3 years of betrayal while Mike worked himself to exhaustion providing for the family. 3 years of his best friend and his wife building something behind his back. In 1999, 6 months before Mike disappeared, he purchased a massive life insurance policy. $1.75 million. A fortune. The person who sold it? Brian Winchester. The person who would collect when Mike went? Denise Williams. Think about that timeline. Affair started 1997. Insurance policy purchased 1999. Mike vanished 2000. Those aren't coincidences. That's a plan. December 16th, 2000. Mike woke before dawn in freezing cold. 19 degrees in Florida. That's rare. That's the kind of cold that makes native Floridians bundle up like they're in Alaska. But for Mike, it was perfect duck hunting weather. He loaded his gear, hunting weapon, waders, decoys, everything a hunter needs. Told Denise he'd be back by noon, kissed her goodbye, headed to Lake Seminole. Lake Seminole sits right on the border between Florida and Georgia, just north of Tallahassee. It's beautiful in a dangerous sort of way. Shallow, swampy water stretching for miles. Cypress trees draped in Spanish moss, creating an almost prehistoric landscape. And alligators. Lots and lots of alligators lurking in murky water. Mike knew the lake well, had hunted there dozens of times over the years, knew the good spots, knew the dangerous areas. He was experienced, careful, respected the water and everything in it, not the type to make careless mistakes that cost lives. But noon came and went. No Mike, no phone call, no text, nothing. Denise called her father. Panic in her voice. Mike hadn't come home. He always came home on time. Something was wrong. They needed to find him right away. Her father immediately contacted Brian Winchester, Mike's best friend who knew all his favorite hunting spots on Lake Seminole. Brian and Denise's father rushed to the lake, found Mike's Ford Bronco and trailer sitting at a remote boat launch on the Florida side. Boat gone. Mike gone. But truck and trailer right where they should be if someone had launched normally. They called Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation. Commission. This was their jurisdiction. Missing hunter on state waters. A massive search operation launched within hours. Professional divers with specialized equipment. Helicopters with heat-seeking cameras. Search dogs trained to find bodies in water. Dozens of officers and volunteers combing every inch of accessible shoreline. The water was shallow. Searchers kept thinking they'd find him any minute. But a brutal storm rolled in late that first day. Wind picked up. Temperature plummeted even further. 19 degrees dropping into the teens after sunset. Dangerous conditions for searchers. The operation had to be called off for the night. Next day, they found Mike's boat 300 yards from launch. Just floating there, engine off. Full gas tank like it had barely been used at all. Hunting weapon still secured in its case. Some decoys scattered around, a few pieces of equipment. Mike? Nowhere to be found. Florida Fish and Wildlife investigators assembled their theory fast, maybe too fast. Mike had fallen overboard somehow. The weight of his heavy waders and gear pulled him under before he could get back to the boat. He drowned in the shallow, freezing water. And because it was winter and Lake Seminole was absolutely full of alligators, those reptiles had consumed his remains, every bit of it. Nothing left behind to find, case closed in their minds. Tragic hunting accident. Happens sometimes. The lake claimed another victim. The search continued for 44 days anyway. Over 700 man-hours invested. Every square foot of accessible lake bed examined by divers. Water so murky they couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. Dogs worked the shoreline for weeks. Helicopters made countless passes overhead with cameras. They never found a remains, never found a bone, never found a shred of his clothing, never found any physical evidence that Mike Williams had actually drowned in that lake. Mike Williams became the only person in the entire recorded history of Lake Seminole to drown and never be recovered. Every single other drowning victim over decades had eventually been found. Bodies recovered, evidence located. But not Mike. Mike Williams simply vanished without any trace, like he'd been erased from existence. One person absolutely refused to believe the official story. Cheryl Williams knew something was wrong from day one. When investigators said her son drowned and was eaten by alligators, she looked them right in the eye and said no. That didn't happen. Mike was an experienced outdoorsman, had hunted Lake Seminole for years, knew every dangerous spot. He wouldn't just fall out. Even if he did, there'd be evidence. There's always evidence when someone drowns. A week after Mike disappeared on Christmas Day 2000, Cheryl visited Lake Seminole herself, stood on the shore where investigators said her son launched his boat, looked out at the dark, cold water. She described what happened next as a voice in her head, clear as anything. Mike is not in Lake Seminole. He did not drown. Some called it denial. A mother unable to accept painful truth. But Cheryl wasn't in denial. She was investigating, following what every fiber of her being told her was real. Cheryl contacted wildlife experts across Florida, asked about alligator behavior in cold water. What they told her? Alligators don't eat in winter. When water drops below 60 degrees, alligators become almost dormant. Metabolism slows dramatically. They stop hunting. They certainly don't consume entire human bodies. Temperature that December morning, 19 degrees. Water temperature maybe 40. Those alligators weren't eating anything, practically hibernating. Cheryl learned something else that bothered her. When alligators actually attack humans, they don't consume bodies whole. They tear off limbs, leave bones scattered, leave shredded clothing. There's always physical evidence. Medical examiners can identify alligator damage easily. It's distinctive, brutal. But Lake Seminole yielded nothing. Not a gnawed bone, not torn waders, nothing whatsoever. 6 months later, something peculiar happened. A fisherman found waders floating in Lake Seminole, near where Mike launched. The same exact area searched dozens of times by professional divers over 44 days. The waders matched what Mike wore. But something was very wrong. Pristine. Completely intact. No alligator teeth marks anywhere. No tears. These waders supposedly sat at lake bottom for 6 months. In water absolutely full of alligators, in muck and algae. They looked brand new. Mike's hunting jacket surfaced around the same time. His hunting license still in the pocket, still legible after 6 months underwater. And the flashlight? Still worked. Turn it on, lights up fine. Think about that. A flashlight underwater for 6 months shouldn't work. Batteries don't survive that exposure. But this one did. Mike's hat appeared one day, floating near launch. Nobody could explain why it wasn't found during initial search. Special Agent Jason Newland with Florida Department of Law Enforcement looked at all this evidence. These items were too new, too clean, too preserved. They'd been planted. Someone staged a scene to make it look like Mike drowned. Denise Williams didn't waste time. Normally in Florida, you wait 5 years before declaring someone legally gone. Denise waited 6 months. June 2001. 6 months after Mike vanished, Denise petitioned court to have him declared legally gone. Evidence, the waders, the jacket, the license, the working flashlight. Judge agreed. Issued death certificate. Cause of ending, accidental drowning. Body not recovered. With that certificate, Denise collected Mike's life insurance. $1.5 million. The policies Brian Winchester sold Mike months before he disappeared. 1.5 million reasons for Mike to vanish. Mike's co-workers said he'd been having marriage problems before disappearing. Nothing major. Credit card stress. Denise exceeded their agreed spending limit. It bothered him. 1 month later, Mike was gone. Denise was a millionaire. 5 years after Mike vanished, Denise married Brian Winchester, Mike's best friend, the man who'd helped search for him, who'd sold him insurance, who stood beside Mike at his wedding. They married, moved into Mike and Denise's house, raised Ansley on insurance money. For Cheryl Williams, this confirmed everything. She started a campaign, billboards, newspaper ads, street corners with signs, 27 pages of notes and evidence compiled. She wrote the governor of Florida every single day for 9 years. Every day. For 9 years. Most thought she was obsessed. Denise said Cheryl was crazy with grief. But Cheryl was right. And she knew stopping meant Mike's ending would never be solved. The cost? Denise cut off all contact with granddaughter Ansley, threatened that pushing for investigation meant never seeing Ansley again. Cheryl lost her son, then her granddaughter. For years, Brian and Denise lived their life built on lies and insurance money. But cracks formed. By 2016, divorce loomed. Brian was falling apart. August 5th, 2016. Brian kidnapped Denise at weapon point. He waited in her car's back seat, grabbed the wheel, pressed a weapon into her ribs, screamed, drove her around for hours while she begged for her life. She escaped, called police. Brian was arrested, kidnapping, aggravated assault, armed burglary. Brian's attorney argued he was suicidal that day. Mother's terminal cancer, teenage son moved out, marriage ending, not trying to end Denise, trying to get attention. Prosecutor disagreed, said Brian planned ending followed by taking his own life. Only Denise's quick thinking saved her. Brian Winchester convicted, 20 years prison, and everything changed. October 2017, Brian Winchester made a deal. He'd tell everything about Mike Williams, every detail, where the body was, how they did it. In exchange, immunity from the ending charge. 20 years for kidnapping, never charged with Mike's elimination. Brian's confession was horrifying. The affair started 1997. They fell hard. But Denise refused divorce. Religious beliefs, strict Christian upbringing. Divorce wasn't an option. So they discussed alternatives. Brian claimed Denise suggested eliminating Mike first. If they couldn't be together because of her religious beliefs about divorce, maybe Mike needed an accident. They planned for months. Drowning seemed best. Less direct, less violent. They could tell themselves it was God's will. If Mike survived, it wasn't meant to be. Just creating opportunity for fate. December 16th, 2000. Brian convinced Mike to hunt together. Just two best friends. Mike agreed. Why wouldn't he? They took Mike's boat to secluded lake area. Brian suggested checking something near shoreline. When Mike stood up, Brian shoved him into freezing water. Plan was for Mike to sink. Heavy waders and gear would pull him under before reaching the boat. Tragic accident. Best friend tried to save him, but couldn't. But Mike didn't sink. He was strong, experienced, fought out of jacket and waders, grabbed floating tree stump, started pulling himself up, was going to survive. Brian panicked, loaded his weapon, piloted boat over to where Mike clung to stump. Mike looked up at his best friend. Probably thought Brian was coming to save him. Probably felt relief. Brian Winchester struck Mike Williams in the head. Think about that moment. Freezing water, fighting for life, seeing your best friend coming toward you, thinking you're saved, then realizing what's about to happen. Who's behind it? Mike's last thoughts weren't about drowning. They were about betrayal. Brian loaded Mike's remains, drove over an hour to Carr Lake, concealed him in a shallow location near Gardner Road, covered him up, left him. Then Brian went back to Lake Seminole, staged the accident scene, left Mike's boat floating with gear, made it look like Mike fell overboard. Over following months, Brian planted evidence, dropped waiters, tossed jacket, left hat. 6 months later, Denise filed to have Mike declared legally gone, collected insurance, waited, then married Brian, almost perfect. October 18th, 2017. Using Brian's confession, investigators went to Carr Lake. They found Mike exactly where Brian said, concealed in shallow location near Gardner Road, skeletal remains, injury to the head. After 17 years, Cheryl had her son back. DNA confirmed identity. Medical examiner determined cause, weapon strike wound. Manner, unlawful ending. Mike hadn't drowned, hadn't been eaten, been struck by his best friend, and concealed while his wife and ending collected insurance money. May 8, 2018. Denise Williams arrested. Charges: first-degree ending of life, conspiracy to commit first-degree ending, accessory after the fact. Trial was sensational. Brian testified against his former wife, described their affair, detailed the planning, explained how Denise told him they'd be like David and Bathsheba, how she helped stage evidence, how she pushed for it. Brian claimed Denise was the mastermind. She'd manipulated him, used religion to justify elimination rather than divorce. Denise's defense argued she played minor role. Brian acted alone. She'd been horrified. Jury didn't buy it. After 8 hours, guilty on all charges. February 2019. Denise sentenced to life without parole. Cheryl testified. 17 years of torture, fighting alone. Denise never testified, never explained, never showed remorse, just sat silent. November 2020, Florida Court of Appeal overturned Denise's first-degree ending conviction. Reasoning: while evidence proved Denise conspired, prosecution hadn't proven she actively participated in actual ending. Brian took the action. Brian concealed the remains. Denise wasn't there. Under law, not guilty of first-degree ending. Conspiracy conviction stood. Ending charge gone. September 9th, 2021. Denise appeared for resentencing. Her attorneys argued leniency. Minor role, deserved mercy. Conspiracy wasn't as serious. Cheryl stood before judge with son Nick. Told court about Mike's suffering, years of not knowing, brutality of what was done. She ended, "Please don't show her mercy. She didn't show my son any. She took him from his daughter, family, friends." Judge James Hankinson listened, then ruled. 30 years. Maximum sentence for conspiracy. Judge made clear. Denise could have stopped everything December 16th, 2000. Could have called Mike, warned him, prevented his ending. Instead, she let it happen. Collected money. Married Brian. Lived in Mike's house with Mike's daughter on Mike's insurance while Mike rotted in a grave. Cheryl cried relief when sentence was read. Justice, finally, after 21 years. Mike Williams' ending continues to fascinate people 25 years later. Brian Winchester is serving 20 years at Madison Correctional Institution in Madison, Florida. As of 2025, he's been behind bars 8 years. He has immunity from Mike's ending. The man who pulled the trigger will walk free someday. Never charged with ending Mike Williams' life because he traded testimony for freedom. Denise Williams is incarcerated at Florida Women's Reception Center, now 55. After her conviction was partially overturned, and she was resentenced to 30 years for conspiracy. Her release date is March 31st, 2046. She'll be 76. She continues maintaining innocence. Prison interviews and letters suggest maybe Brian acted alone. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe evidence was wrong. Never accepted responsibility. Never shown remorse. Never explained why she collected Mike's insurance and married his ending if she had nothing to do with it. January 2020, Denise appealed again. Denied, 2021, Florida Attorney General tried getting Florida Supreme Court to review the overturned ending conviction. Supreme Court declined. Denise sits in her cell every day for 21 more years. Mike and Denise's daughter Ansley graduated college, lives in Tallahassee, working, trying to build life despite the horror. 2019, Denise signed over all of Mike's estate and insurance to Ansley to avoid insurance fraud prosecution. The deal? Ansley cannot use money on her mother's legal fees. If she does, she owes the state $150,000. Ansley was raised by Denise and Brian until her mother's arrest at 19. Then raised by Mike's mother, Cheryl. Today, she maintains relationships with both families, Williamses and Morells, stayed out of public eye. Cheryl Williams is alive and living in Florida near son Nick and his family, now in her 70s. The woman who never gave up, who wrote letters daily for 9 years, who stood on corners with signs when everyone moved on, who knew Mike wasn't in Lake Seminole from day one. She finally buried her son properly. Mike's remains laid to rest. Headstone. Place to visit. After 17 years of not knowing, Cheryl had her answer. And justice. Not perfect, not where both people go to prison for life, but justice nonetheless. The case spawned multiple documentaries. CBS 48 Hours featured Cold-Blooded Ending. NBC's Dateline aired Secrets of Lake Seminole. Investigation Discovery's Disappeared. Crime Junkie podcast. Meet, Marry, Ending. Cold Case Files. July 2025, ABC News Studios and Hulu released Mr. and Mrs. Ending, a 4-part docuseries providing comprehensive look. Featured exclusive interviews with Brian Winchester's ex-wife, Kathy Aldridge, who played crucial role by recording conversations with Denise after Brian's arrest. The case became true crime phenomenon, not because of elimination itself, but what it represented. Betrayal, calculated planning, 17 years of lies, mother who never gave up. Perfect crime that almost worked. Mike Williams did everything right, worked hard, provided for family, loved his daughter, trusted his wife and best friend, kind, generous. Everyone called him a good guy. Hardest working man his boss ever saw. The two people he trusted most ended him for money and convenience. Think about the coldness required. Denise and Brian didn't act in passion, didn't snap in rage. They planned for years, discussed options, calculated possibilities, bought insurance, waited for perfect moment. Brian's confession reveals twisted logic. They convinced themselves drowning was somehow less wrong because it gave Mike a chance. If God wanted him to live, he'd survive. They were just creating opportunity for divine intervention. That's sociopathic rationalization. Dressing up premeditated ending as fate. Making calculated betrayal sound like higher purpose. But when Mike survived that first attempt, when he fought out of jacket and waders and grabbed that stump, there was no divine intervention. Just Brian with a weapon. Best friend who became ending. Strike to the head while Mike probably thought he was being rescued. The religious angle makes it worse. Denise claimed she couldn't divorce Mike because of Christian beliefs. But she could plan his ending? Could collect insurance and marry her lover and live in her gone husband's house and raise his daughter on evidence money? That's not religion. That's greed wrapped in a cross. Denise did something arguably worse than pulling the trigger. She stood by and let it happen, knew exactly what Brian planned. Could have stopped it with one phone call. Could have warned Mike. Instead, she practiced her performance as grieving widow. Planned what she'd say when he didn't come home. Prepared to collect money and move on like Mike never existed. She took Mike's daughter and raised her with the man who ended her father. Let Ansley call Brian Dad, while Mike rotted in unmarked grave. prevented Cheryl from seeing granddaughter, threatened her, tried to silence her, all to protect the lie. The most devastating part isn't the elimination. It's the 17 years that followed. 17 years of Cheryl fighting alone. 17 years of Denise living in comfort. 17 years of Brian walking free. 17 years of lies about alligators and accidents. 17 years that could have been avoided if one person told the truth. The alligator theory was brilliant. If body's gone, there's nothing to investigate. No forensics, no projectiles, no evidence. Just tragic accident. Nature took its course. Case closed. Except investigators forgot about a mother's love. Cheryl Williams refused to let her son become forgotten. Refused the easy answer. Refused to move on. She fought when fighting seemed hopeless. Believed when belief seemed crazy. Persisted when persistence seemed futile. She saved her son, not his life, but his justice, his memory, his truth. Today, people remember Mike Williams for the truth, that he was ended by people who should have protected him, that his mother never gave up, that justice, however imperfect, eventually came. Mike was 31 when he went. Should have raised his daughter. Should have celebrated anniversaries with a wife who loved him. Should have retired someday. Should have watched grandchildren play. Instead, he's concealed in Tallahassee. Eliminated at 31 by wife and best friend for insurance money. Daughter grew up without him. Mother spent 17 years searching. Brother lost sibling forever. For what? For $1.5 million, Denise had to give Ansley anyway to avoid fraud charges. For marriage with Brian, that fell apart. For life in prison until 76, still claiming innocence, still playing victim. The final truth. Mike trusted wrong people. His wife didn't love him. His best friend betrayed him. Two people who should have had his back put projectile in his head. But his mother never stopped fighting. Because of that, Mike Williams' elimination didn't remain cold. It became solved unlawful ending. Conviction, small measure of justice in unjust world. As Brian and Denise sit in prison, maybe they think about what they lost for insurance money, freedom, families, reputations, any chance at redemption. Or maybe they don't think about him at all. Maybe sociopaths don't work that way. Maybe the capacity to shoot your best friend while he begs for help means never feeling remorse. Either way, justice came. Slow, imperfect, but it came. And somewhere in Tallahassee, there's a headstone with Mike Williams' name. Finally buried properly, finally at rest, finally free from cold waters of Lake Seminole where he was never supposed to be. His mother made sure of that. That's the final truth, not the ending, but the love that refused to let the ending be forgotten. The mother who fought against everyone and everything to bring her son home. The 17-year battle that ended with handcuffs and prison sentences and small measure of peace. Mike Williams is gone, but not forgotten, and his ending didn't get away with it. Sometimes, that has to be enough.